How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify in these majors. You got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness. And I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. Mm-hmm. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern.
Live right here into hour number 2 of the early line on this Friday, all across the SportsGrid network. Of course, if you have not been with us for the opening hour on this Friday, you have missed a ton of breaking news out of Louisville. That is the site of the 2024 PGA Championship at Valhalla Golf Club. What we know as of this moment, Scottie Scheffler was detained after a traffic situation outside of the grounds of the golf course. He was officially booked, charged with 4 counts, has been released on his own recognizance. And Donnie, right side, the latest update from Adam Schefter. Yes, Adam Schefter of ESPN. Scottie Scheffler is on his way to Valhalla Golf Club per the ESPN Plus coverage. So we expect Scottie Scheffler, it would seem as of this moment, to continue play in the 2024 PGA Championship after a 4 under par opening round of 67. Scottie Scheffler has a 5-1 price, third best number on the FanDuel Sportsbook to win the PGA Championship this year. Again, the odds not exactly explaining the entirety of the seriousness of this situation.
Yeah, so let's see if he actually tees off, if he doesn't tee off. And also keep in mind, like if you're saying to yourself, well, I took a flyer on Scottie at 8-1 and he doesn't tee off, I'm pretty sure that is a losing option. So even though you're getting value technically right now, you're actually betting on if he's actually going to tee it up. And also, what's the state of mind that Scottie Scheffler is actually teeing it up today? And also keep in mind, this isn't something where you just can go out there and play golf. These guys have hours and hours of preparation before they actually hit the golf course that he isn't going to have. So he's going to show up on tee number 1 ice cold after having this moment here. This is a wild scene, and we're certainly going to keep you updated. But so many options running through my mind, as well as everybody else thinking about the situation as well, Ben.
More than 150 golfers in the field of the 2024 PGA Championship on this cut day Friday. Keith Stewart joined us live in this first hour, live from the grounds of Valhalla, describing it as a chaotic, wild atmosphere. Any further updates we will continue to provide throughout this second hour and the rest of these 2 hours here on this Friday on the early line. But, oh yeah, there's NBA playoff action on this Friday. There was one lone NBA playoff game on a Thursday night and a 45-point blowout in the Twin Cities. that we really need to detail for you here on the early line. Again, any further updates on Scottie Scheffler, those will be provided. Anything around the situation at the PGA Championship will come your way as soon as we know them. But now we welcome on Bryan Fonseca, one of our good friends on this program, to break down what we saw last night in Minneapolis and make it make sense as we get ready for a Game 7 on Sunday back in Denver inside the Mile High City. Fonseca, thank you for being here on what has become a chaotic Friday for us on the early line.
Yeah, I woke up to that Scottie Scheffler news is what I was telling you guys earlier. And as somebody who doesn't watch or cover a ton of golf, I know who that is. So that seems like a pretty big story. But yes, thank you for having me. Excited to talk about some other things.
Yes, Scottie Scheffler is the world #1 golfer. Some of the police, it would seem, in Louisville did not know who was involved in that situation. Bryan, one of the shocking things I also woke up to this morning, a 45-point victory for the Minnesota Timberwolves in game number 6 over the Denver Nuggets. Minnesota covers easily, winning 115-70 as a 2.5-point home favorite. It is the largest margin of victory in an NBA playoff game in nearly a decade since 2015. Fonseca, I'm not sure truly how to describe what we saw yesterday in Minneapolis. So I ask you, how did the Timberwolves win by 45 and force a 7th game?
Just one of those 2024 NBA games that gets away from a team very early. We actually saw this early on in this series when it looked like Minnesota was going to sweep Denver at one point before Denver rallied to win 3 straight. Denver scored 9 points in the fourth quarter, 9. And by that point, I don't think a lot of people were watching the game anymore. To me, it was pretty shocking as somebody who had Denver because, I have Denver winning the series. And I was like, all right, going into game 6, take them game 6. And if they lose, hammer them game 7, which is what I still plan to do regardless, because you can't really judge a series on a game-to-game basis because it sounds stupid, but every game is different, an entirely different experience. This isn't going to happen, most likely, when we get to Denver. And it was the second biggest blowout of the month, the first being the battle between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. And I think Denver scored more points in that than Drake did in that battle. So, yeah.
Oof.
Bryan, if we take a look at this series overall, and also from the Minnesota Timberwolves perspective, come right into the playoffs and knock out the Suns in 4 games in a sweep, then handle their business on the road against Denver in elevation. Looks like we were just going to crown them. All right, let's move them forward to the Western Conference Finals. Then we saw the heart of a champion, the Nuggets, 3 straight victories here. And you're right about this. We expected to saddle up to the TV last night and watch an unbelievable performance from 2 superstar players in Jokic and Edwards. We didn't really need those superstar performances because the game got out of hand in the second half. So let me ask you this. How do you rebound if you're Denver from getting smoked by that much? Was it just a wrap like, you know what, second half, let's just not get injured. Let's send the guys to the bench. We'll get these guys in game number 7. How do you come back from a butt whipping like they saw last night?
Yeah, and I felt like early on they were actually getting good looks. One of the things people quickly forget about the game is they actually built the 9-2 lead to start it. So they were outscored whatever to whatever. I'm not going to do the math here because math on the radio and on us and on TV is boring. But like I think ultimately making shots would help, and they did get good looks. Jamal Murray just has not gotten going this series. And that's one of the things we sort of projected going into this was Jamal Murray was going to struggle defensively, whether it be because he sees Nickeil Alexander-Walker, whether it be because he sees Jaden McDaniels or whomever else, maybe even Anthony Edwards at times. But yeah, I didn't expect this to be a Jamal Murray series, but I'd expect he'd have an impactful game by now. He kind of hasn't for the most part. 2 for 14 at one point last night, and by then I kind of tuned the rest of the game out because it was already a 40-point affair. So I'm not sure like where it actually ended for Jamal Murray, but it was bad. And ultimately, I think he's somebody that you have to get going, unless Nikola Jokic is going to do the thing again. But like I know when he sees Rudy Gobert one-on-one, he salivates. I don't know how much they're going to risk that if they're Minnesota. They're probably going to try to defend Nikola Jokic differently in game 7. But Jamal Murray getting going would help. He needs to make shots.
Jamal Murray in game 2, that 26-point blowout for the T-Wolves on the road in Denver, 3 of 18. Last night, Jamal Murray, 4 of 18. The Nuggets as a team shot 30%. and just 7 of 36 from beyond the arc. That's how you score only 70 points in an NBA playoff game. Game 7 at altitude on Sunday. The Nuggets currently listed as a 4.5-point favorite, total at 197.5. There is one game in the NBA postseason tonight. It is game number 6 in Indianapolis between the Pacers and the Knicks. Of course, Fonseca, New York, 1 win away from its first appearance in an Eastern Conference Finals in nearly 2.5 decades since 2000. The Pacers hoping for a victory to stave off elimination and force a 7th game back inside Madison Square Garden. Indiana listed as a 6-point home favorite. What do you think happens tonight in Indy?
Yeah, I am backing the Knicks to cover, and I put a little something on them to win. I think they win the series. I had them winning in 6 before, exact method 4-2. So I am just going to back them in this series because in a close game situation, and I do think there's going to be a close game, in a close game situation, I tend to lean on the team who is tougher, who is better defensively, and who is a better rebounding team. And the Knicks have like a 54 rebound percentage in this series to the Pacers, who have 46. They're out rebounding them on average 44 to 37 to 38 per game. And every time they out rebound a team, they pretty much win. And even if their offense in the last 8 minutes of a game is just put up bad shots and get offensive rebounds, that works because they get second chance points out of that. They get more opportunities out of that. And the Pacers simply don't have the bodies to keep them off the glass. So I lean Knicks here, and the Pacers really have to shoot out of their minds, in my opinion, to win this game.
You could consider Game 6 of the second-round series a heavyweight fight, but there's also a heavyweight bout in the boxing ring this weekend as well. Fonseca details it next.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Hendrick ends up winning his first PGA Tour win. He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in 2, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Do Leafs fans stop watching hockey now, or do they root for other Canadian teams, Cam?
No, I'm not a proponent of that, and it's actually kind of bothered me that, like, all the people in Toronto are kind of like, oh, now I'm going to cheer for the Oilers. Like, why? What was your affiliation with the Oilers? Like, Canucks still exist. Like, I don't lose automatically and say, yeah, I'm going to cheer for the Ottawa Senators because they're Canadian. No, I cheer for my bats.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
A lot of books, and outside of the New York area, the Canes are actually favored in Game 1 of this series. I'm seeing it right now. I'm looking. I see a -115 Canes, Rangers -105.
I like the 6 and 7 games prop, like I took with Boston, Toronto, which we now know is going to cash. I think it's got a chance to go the distance. It's going to be a long, tough, close series.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk for the heavyweight undisputed title in the world. That's what we have on Saturday afternoon, and Bryan Fonseca joins us for a second consecutive segment to preview this huge, and literally with the stature of both individuals and in its significance, boxing bout tomorrow. Fonseca, we appreciate you being here for a second consecutive segment. As you shared with us during the commercial break, maybe not the staunchest of boxing fans, myself, can't speak for Donnie Rightside, the winner of tomorrow's fight will be the first undisputed heavyweight champion of the world since Lennox Lewis in 2000. It is a monumental fight on Saturday afternoon. How do you explain all of the hype and the excitement for Fury versus Usyk?
Yeah, this one is legitimately, and as somebody who covers boxing and loves it as an art form, even though politically there's a lot that goes on there, this is one of those fights that actually is warranting reaching the masses. It's a legitimate 50-50 high-profile fight because betting odds are all over the place in terms of who's the favorite. There was a time this week where one prominent sportsbook had Tyson Fury listed at minus 120, and the other had Tyson Fury listed at minus 108. Minus 108, he was a slight dog because Usyk was minus 114, and the one where he was a favorite, Usyk, was plus 100. So this is where it's been like all over the place with this fight. And this is also something that's been a couple years in the making because there's been back and forth. When is this fight going to take place? And we finally had a date. It was December, and in October, Tyson Fury decided to fight Francis Ngannou and didn't take the fight seriously at all. I don't care what people have to say, particularly diehard MMA fans who want to give Francis Ngannou a lot of credit, and he deserves some. But Tyson Fury visibly showed up overweight for that fight, like more than usual. Didn't train properly, it looked like. He didn't have his win completely, and he just put on an embarrassing performance. And then the fight with Usyk got pushed back to February, and then there was an injury, so it got pushed back again to May. Now we're finally here. We're finally getting it. And I can't wait because we don't get a lot of high-profile 50-50 fights like this over the course of a year.
No, Brian, it's a great point you bring up, too, because usually the fights we're talking about is, can somebody pull an upset here? What does this guy need to do to be an underdog to win this fight? And you're looking at roughly a pick'em, which is awesome. And you take a look at the records. Tyson Fury, 34-0-1. You take a look at Usyk here. He actually hasn't had a loss either at 21-0. So, as I say, the O has got to go for one of these boxers. Coming into the fight, what's the matchup like, and what can we anticipate from the styles of these two fighters?
So if Alexander Usyk is going to win this fight, he needs to do it based on volume. For people who don't know, he's a former undisputed cruiserweight champion. The cruiserweight weight limit of boxing is 200 pounds. He was, an Olympian, all those different things. One of the most decorated amateur boxers we've had over the last, I don't know, however many years at this point, because he had around 350 amateur fights and won most of them. Like he's really that good. And it took him a while to become a pro boxer. He's sneaky up there in age, as is Tyson Fury, both in their mid-30s. But he needs to do it based on volume because he is going to be outsized a lot in this match. And he's also a southpaw, which is going to give Tyson Fury an interesting look. Tyson Fury is 6'9" with a 7'1" reach. Alexander Usyk is approximately 6'3" with a reach that's about 65 inches, or rather, 6'5" reach. And with Tyson Fury, he's somebody who can win this fight if he finds his range early, sort of manages his distance, and makes it difficult for Alexander Usyk to close in on him and also hit him to the body, because there's a rap out there that Alexander Usyk, his punch resistance to the body isn't great. There was a controversy from his last fight last summer where Danny Dubois apparently, seemed to low blow him, although if you look closely, it may have been a body shot that actually floored Alexander Usyk. So Tyson Fury will likely try to test him there. It's just easier to get to, hey, Tyson Fury wins this fight because he's bigger. He's also very fast because he's 6'9", 71-inch reach. Is probably going to weigh in 250-something, 60-something, maybe 270-something, and moves like a welterweight because he's that good. But Alexander Usyk is also that good. Like, these are legitimately the two best heavyweights in the world. And again, we don't get fights like this very often.
The odds certainly stack up for this heavyweight bout. As we showed, it is a virtual pick'em. Tyson Fury, just a slight favorite, the Gypsy King. For this to go the distance, that's the favored number as well at minus 215. Expected to live up to the billing and match those sky-high expectations. So let's get Bryan Fonseca's official fight prediction. If you only had one wager, Bryan, what would it be on this bout between Fury and Usyk?
What I took earlier this week was Tyson Fury by decision at plus 220 in one prominent sportsbook. And actually, it was FanDuel. I could say that because I see their logo right here. They're sponsoring this program.
There you go. Okay.
So it was on FanDuel. So I could say that. But yes, it was plus 220 by decision. I don't think there's going to be a knockout in this fight, although it's heavyweight boxing. So, like, that wouldn't surprise me totally. It's just not something I would bet on. Tyson Fury's been dropped 7 different times in his career, 4 of them by Deontay Wilder, who's the hardest punching heavyweight probably of my lifetime, as somebody who wasn't old enough for the entire Mike Tyson experience. I think he was in jail when I was born. And I think as it relates to this fight, Alexander Usyk, he's not somebody who's been dropped either, unless you count the Danny Dubois sort of knockdown, air quotes, from last year. But I think both of these guys are going to make it 12 rounds. Like, that's something that I would bet on. And to me, Tyson Fury is going to get the decision because that's been my knee-jerk reaction just in this entire process. I feel like he's just better when he's focused. He wasn't focused for Francis Ngannou, didn't need to be focused that much for Derek Chisora, knocked out Dillian White, who's not as good as Alexander Usyk. And I expect him to turn it up in this fight and actually be the Tyson Fury that we know.
On that graphic, we listed it with a question mark. Fight of the century. It is a bout between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk to decide the first undisputed heavyweight champion of the world since Lennox Lewis in the year 2000. This would be a new century after 2000, a new millennium, if you want to categorize it as such. Bryan Fonseca, we appreciate the time on this Friday morning, first in the NBA playoffs, and then for the heavyweight bout tomorrow afternoon on a Saturday as well. Thank you, and have a wonderful weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Very glad to have you here. Further updates coming your way after the commercial break from Louisville, Kentucky in the 2024 PGA Championship at Valhalla with Scottie Scheffler. Reports from our guy, Keith Stewart, who is live in Louisville. Comes your way up next. You're on the early line.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal. Only on SportsGrid.
When it comes to betting on sports, injuries matter, and Sports Injury Central has you covered all year long with expert injury analysis and injury-based picks for the NFL, NBA, and MLB. Our former pro sports doctors have unmatched experience to analyze every injury so you know the impact of the player, team, and their upcoming matchup. Whether it's articles, podcasts, player insights, or our patented injury scores, Sports Injury Central will help you keep up with your fantasy team and make more informed wagers. So make sure you follow Sports Injury Central and gain an edge at sixscore.com.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The chaotic scene at Valhalla Golf Club in Louisville, Kentucky continues to play out on this Friday morning of the second round of the 2024 PGA Championship. And from our guy, Keith Stewart, who is live there at Valhalla, who joined us in the opening hour, he is reporting that Scottie Scheffler arrived this morning back at the golf course in a black Range Rover in that vehicle. And there is the photo posted on the screen. Scottie Scheffler was booked by the Louisville Metropolitan Department of Corrections a little bit ahead of 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time on this Friday. He was charged with 4 counts. He was released on his own recognizance, and now, as it is reported and shown here, DRS is getting ready to play in his second round at the 2024 PGA Championship. You said it perfectly earlier on in this opening hour. You have to question what his mentality is for a golfer that always seems unfazed by the moment, even at the highest level of this sport. One can only conjure up the thoughts going through Scheffler's mind on this Friday.
You're right about that. Like, what is his mindset as he's back on the golf course? Apparently, he appears ready to go. But again, you don't have that normal process of going through your morning breakfast. You're getting to the range. You're getting your workouts in. You're reviewing the golf course. You're thrust right back into the moment, and certainly a heightened moment where all eyes are going to be on him. But also, let's take a moment here for what the PGA has to anticipate, because we're probably going to get a press conference sooner than later before Scottie tees off, giving everybody an update. And also, you know the questions are going to come in because we ask these all the time in other sports. It's rare in golf. We say, hold on, this guy is going to be allowed to tee it up in a major championship with pending charges just assigned to him, and he's booked in and out of jail this morning. Those are going to come up here. So we've never seen this. So we're reacting in real time as it goes here. Yep. But never in a million years did I think just 1 hour ago, Ben, that Scottie Scheffler was coming back to Valhalla and he's going to tee it up. And the best part about it, we're going to be live on the air when the anticipated tee time just after 10 o'clock hits. This is going to be unbelievable. We've never seen this.
Scottie Scheffler is scheduled to start his second round at 10:08 a.m. Eastern Time. Part of the situation with Scottie Scheffler and the traffic incident of which he was detained, arrested, put into handcuffs, and booked this morning stems from a very unfortunate accident that happened in the early morning hours on this Friday outside and near Valhalla. A pedestrian was struck. It resulted in a fatality by a bus. The accident caused a traffic log jam that resulted in Scottie Scheffler in what was reported as a marked PGA official vehicle trying to get around to get into Valhalla for his second round tee time. Of course, it has led to all of the information we have provided in the last hour and a half. We have truly never seen anything like this. Nothing like this ahead of a second round of a major championship. If this was insert X golfer, it would be a dramatic story. It is world number 1, Scottie Scheffler, who in his opening round shot a 4 under par 67. He will enter round 2 trailing Xander Schauffele, who tops the leaderboard after a historic 62 in his opening round. Schauffele is 9 under par. And one of my favorite things always on the SportsGrid Network is to follow these sports conversations through the odds and to provide that information. And as we got update on update and info on Scottie Scheffler, his number, his odds to win the PGA Championship outright, what would be his second consecutive major championship title, changed. As he was booked, it was the longest number we saw at 8-1. I know I'm laughing, but it's just the odds in comparison to the severity of actually being charged and booked this morning in jail. But it was the longest price that we had seen at 8-1 in the overnight hours entering round 2 on this Friday. It was a 4-1 number, second shortest, only behind the tournament leader in Xander Schauffele. And as we expect Scottie Scheffler to be on the course for his second round, he is now tied for the second best price at plus 450 alongside Rory McIlroy to win the PGA Championship. You truly can't make it up, Donnie.
It's unbelievable. And I usually say, entering into the major championship season, the PGA Championship is always number 4 on my list, followed by the Masters, the U.S. Open, and the British Open here. This rocketed immediately to number 1. And also, we might get the highest rated round we've ever seen in major championship history just because of the wildness surrounding this entire event right now. And as you said, Ben, no, it's not funny, Ben. Stop laughing. It's not a funny situation at this point. And you're laughing. I know you're laughing at me. I'm just trying to make a joke out of that. But here we go. PGA. Yeah. Can we go? Wait, by the way, do we have the rights to go live here and watch him tee off along with the public? I think we could do that today, right? Who cares?
We're going to finagle our way into it, no doubt. I'm only laughing at you, my co-host, putting it in a DRS context. More comes your way up next.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Hendrick ends up winning his first PGA Tour win. He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in 2, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Do Leafs fans stop watching hockey now, or do they root for other Canadian teams, Cam?
No, I'm not a proponent of that, and it's actually kind of bothered me that, like, all the people in Toronto are kind of like, oh, now I'm going to cheer for the Oilers. Like, why? What was your affiliation with the Oilers? Like, Canucks still exist. Like, I don't lose automatically and say, yeah, you know, I'm going to cheer for the Ottawa Senators because of the Canadian. No, I cheer for my bats.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
A lot of books, and outside of the New York area, the Canes are actually favored in Game 1 of this series. I'm seeing it right now. I'm looking. I see a minus 115 Canes, Rangers minus 105.
I like the 6 and 7 games prop, like I took with Boston, Toronto, which we now know is going to cash. I think it's got a chance to go the distance. It's going to be a long, tough, close series.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
I mean, honestly, what better guest to have on this Friday morning ahead of a major weekend in the world of sports than Dubs Anderson, a guy that can do everything for FanDuel TV. He will preview the second leg of the Triple Crown tomorrow at Pimlico. That's the Preakness Stakes. And then he will also talk what has been a wild morning ahead of the second round of the PGA Championship, of the second major of this year in golf. That's the PGA Championship. Dubsy, our guy Dubs Anderson, glad to have you here bright and early on a Friday morning for you out on the West Coast. It's not even 7 a.m. for you, Dubsy, and so much has already occurred.
Mate, the phone started pinging about 3 hours ago. That massive news coming across in the golf world there for Scottie Scheffler. I don't think we've ever had a morning like this one. It sort of feels like when the news broke of Tiger Woods back there in 2021 when he had that car accident. But, I mean, Scottie Scheffler, superstar in the sport. And as you highlighted, Ben, we're also going in to the second jewel of the Triple Crown on the horse racing front. So a lot of activity early on a Friday, that's for sure.
The 149th running of the Preakness Stakes following the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby earlier this month. It is the second leg of the Triple Crown, and the winner of the Derby, Mystic Dan, is currently the betting favorite. But let's start with who entered Pimlico as the betting favorite, but was scratched earlier this week on Wednesday, Muth, who was expected to be, Dubsy, that pre-race favorite after winning the Arkansas Derby. How does that change your approach to the Preakness?
It changes everything, and this is one of the big storylines coming into this week. Trainer Bob Baffert, Hall of Famer Bob Baffert, who is still suspended from Churchill Downs, was not allowed to put his horses forward to the Kentucky Derby. So suddenly we had the winner of the Kentucky Derby and Mystic Dan squaring off against who's believed to be the best 3-year-old in Muth. Muth was set as the morning line favorite, as the one to beat. Being a scratch this week, Muth will not go. Mystic Dan now takes over favoritism, but Bob Baffert still has a runner here in imagination. And in terms of the betting side of things, it changes it completely because we look at the pace of a race like a game script. If we look at a football game, the early speed was Muth and was going to be very tough to catch in this spot. Now, what does it mean for Mystic Dan? Well, the path just opens wide open here. It has a very good chance of picking up the second jewel towards the Triple Crown. Set at 5-2 on the morning line, plus 250. We've only had 13 Triple Crown winners, the last being Justified in 2018. So this is one of the biggest achievements in sports. And this race, it sort of gets, a little disrespected, discounted, but this really is the bridge between winning the Kentucky Derby and going on to be one of the all-time greats in the sport of horse racing. So for Mystic Dan, now has a really good chance of getting it done.
Dubs, for some people out there that don't watch a lot of horse racing, we just tune into the Triple Crown. We watch the Kentucky Derby. There's a lot of horses in that race, but now we only see 8 horses in the Preakness. Is this the norm for that? And what's the reasoning for why we have such a bigger field in the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, it's really tough, Donnie, because we run it 2 weeks back, and I guess that's probably going to be the knock towards Mystic Dan. So a lot of these horses need a bit more time to recover, and you look at when Mystic Dan turned it back really quickly early in the career, it was a bit of a bounce, and that's sort of a common theme amongst the form cycle. It's a big performance, then a bit of a bounce, then it's a big performance. So for Mystic Dan at that short price, that could be one of the concerns, turning it around just 2 weeks after giving such a massive performance there at the Kentucky Derby. A smaller field, we're not getting the same prices, the same numbers that we saw going into the starting gate at Churchill Downs, but certainly looks to be a very competitive race on paper. And whenever we get a Kentucky Derby champion turning it back into the Preakness, they always bet down hard because the public are thinking, well, 2 weeks ago, this horse was good enough to win the Derby. Surely they're going to be the one to beat in the Preakness. But that would be my hesitation on the wagering side of things for sure.
Mystic Dan looking to become the 37th winner of the first 2 legs of a Triple Crown to try to etch his name into history. But in this 8-horse field, Dubsy, what is the best bet for the 149th Preakness Stakes?
I think it's Catching Freedom. Catching Freedom comes in for trainer Brad Cox. We get Flavion Pratt in the irons. Was a devastating performance in the Louisiana Derby. Ran in the Kentucky Derby. Was a very game 4th place finish on that outing and just didn't get the trip. When you've got 20 horses in a race, you need a bit of luck, a bit of good fortune on your side. Didn't get it back there at Churchill. I think this shapes up to be a very nice placing here for Catching Freedom, a superstar. Looks to be a progressive time. And again, these are the 3-year-olds. They're only 3-year-olds once in the Derby, in the Preakness, in the Belmont. I'm looking for a bit of a step forward. I think we could get that with Catching Freedom. The early speed of this race will be coming from that Bob Baffert runner in imagination. I'm looking for a nice closing kick. I think we get the pace set up here for Catching Freedom, who should still be sitting at a bit of a price, listed at plus 600 at 6-1 there on the morning line. And we'll start from post position 3 for conditioner Brad Cox.
Dubs, if I ask you a quick question here, let's just say Mystic Dan does win this race here heading into the Belmont. Would he be considered a favorite for that as well? And also the prognosis of, do we see a Triple Crown champion this year? What's the probabilities?
I think we'd have a really good chance. And for Mystic Dan, smaller field now. You take out one of the classiest looking 3-year-olds who's been a superstar on that training track. Good chance that we will see Muth run in the 3rd Triple Crown. So I think things get a lot tougher. For Mystic Dan, I've got question marks. I think we're a little vulnerable coming into this spot to be the 14th winner of the Triple Crown. You've got to be a very special racehorse, and not to take anything away from that performance that we saw underneath the Twin Spires. But Forever Young was riding the mix. Sierra Leone was bested by a nose. Catching Freedom wasn't too far off, so it wasn't really that dominating performance by 2, 3, 4 lengths for me to sit back and say this is the best 3-year-old of the crop. So in terms of a Triple Crown, question marks. Next step starts tomorrow there with the Preakness.
Of course, the closest finish ever in the history of the Kentucky Derby and the race in the first Saturday of May was the 150th running. A nose might be too much. It might have been a whisker or a little bit of spit that won Mystic Dan the Derby. But Dubs, we now transition to one of your other areas of expertise. That is the 2024 PGA Championship. We have video fresh into our newsroom of Scottie Scheffler arriving this morning in that black Range Rover after being booked but released on his own recognizance, making his way to get ready for round number 2 at the 2024 PGA Championship. Reports from Friday Golf, a great coverage site for all things professional golf, reporting that the owner of Valhalla Golf Club was the driver who went to jail to get Scottie Scheffler, to only add another wrinkle into this chaotic Friday at Valhalla. So, Dubsy, it's hard to anticipate what Scottie Scheffler is going to be thinking as he gets ready for play in round number 2. What do you think the atmosphere is like on this Friday at the PGA Championship?
I mean, we've never seen anything like this in the world of golf. There's quite the buzz, and obviously it's terrible news with that fatal incident which led to Scottie Scheffler, I guess, being detained earlier today. But he's got to be in a different kind of headspace. You know, golf is not everything for Scottie Scheffler. He's a new father, just welcomed in his very first child in the last couple of weeks. He's a 10-time winner. He's a 2-time green jacket holder. So for Scottie Scheffler, if golf is not the ultimate, I can't imagine he is going to show up there and be capable of giving his best effort. He is the best golfer in the world right now. 4 under par there yesterday. He was absolutely right there in the mix. For him to shoot under par today, I would be absolutely blown away. He'll be walking on that fairway between the ropes. He'll be looking for a distraction, but all he will be able to think about is the family and everything off the golf course, what comes next. I mean, I don't know Scottie Scheffler's booking record, but I imagine this is the first time that he's ever had to go through such a thing under these circumstances. The second major championship of the year. It's already tough enough. This does not help Scottie Scheffler in any way in trying to make a bid towards the PGA Championship.
Scheffler tied for the second best price to win this tournament outright alongside Rory McIlroy, only behind Xander Schauffele. It's a plus 450 number on Scottie Scheffler. Dubsy, we appreciate the time as always. Looking forward to some great coverage this weekend of the Preakness on FanDuel TV. More on the early line up next.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Hendricks ends up winning his first PGA Tour win. He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in 2, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the book.
Do Leafs fans stop watching hockey now, or do they root for other Canadian teams, Cam?
No, I'm not a proponent of that, and it's actually kind of bothered me that, like, all of the people in Toronto are kind of like, oh, now I'm going to cheer for the Oilers. Like, why? What was your affiliation with the Oilers? Like, Canucks still exist. Like, I don't lose automatically and say, yeah, you know, I'm going to cheer for the Ottawa Senators because they're Canadian. No, I cheer for my bats.
The Bostonian versus the book.
A lot of books, and outside of the New York area, the Canes are actually favored in Game 1 of this series. I'm seeing it right now. I'm looking. I see a minus 115 Canes, Rangers minus 105.
I like the 6 and 7 games prop, like I took with Boston, Toronto, which we now know is going to cash. I think it's got a chance to go the distance. It's going to be a long, tough, close series.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Live on this Friday morning on the early line on Sports Grid, he is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. Of course, we continue to follow the situation around world number one golfer Scottie Scheffler. As Adam Schefter of ESPN just reported, Scottie Scheffler is on his way to the driving range somehow, some way, trying to get ready and warm for his second round of the 2024 PGA Championship. He is set to tee off at 10:08 a.m. Eastern Time in just over 20 minutes in Louisville. Currently, Donnie, he is in a tie for 11th after a 4-under par 67 in his opening round on Thursday.
Yeah, and it's something to keep an eye on this point of what we're going to get out of Scottie Scheffler in round number 2, because it's apparent he is going to finish this golf tournament, at least try again to make the cut. We'll see what happens today. I do see the PGA Championship did send out an official tweet basically saying, I don't want to read the whole tweet going through, but it's about the crash that happened this morning, devastated obviously with how this transpired, but no real comment here, I believe, on Scottie Scheffler's incident. So we are still waiting for an official word of what actually happened, but we're in such a precarious position. It's almost like, Ben, what would the official word be from the PGA right now? Look, we understand Scottie Scheffler got booked into jail. He's going to tee it up here. Like, I don't even know how you go about doing this because we're not used to it at this point, but I would expect that somebody's going to have something before he tees off here, because it was noted we saw him go back to the golf course, and also he's on the golf range at this point. So he is going to be teeing it up in roughly, 30 minutes from now.
I'm not sure we'll hear from anybody associated with the PGA. Again, this is the PGA of America that runs the PGA Championship, not the PGA Tour, despite the similar name. I don't think we'll hear from anybody associated with Scottie Scheffler either until after his round. I believe he will use the next 4 or 5 hours as strictly a distraction from the real world stuff to focus only on the golf course. But what the PGA Championship just reported on Twitter, that this morning a fatal accident occurred, that is what led to the traffic situation that led to Scottie Scheffler ending up in detainment by the Louisville Police Department. It's a very unfortunate situation, all a part of a sad and chaotic Friday morning ahead of round number 2 of the PGA Championship that delayed play for every golfer in the field, not just Scottie Scheffler, by about an hour and 20 minutes. Scottie Scheffler set to tee off in just over 20 minutes. As we approach his tee time, we will provide more information. But now, without any more info at this moment, we focus elsewhere in the world of sports, setting the stage for this now monumental weekend all across sports and in the NBA playoffs. There is only one game over the next 3 days, each and every day in the NBA postseason. Game 6 tonight in Indianapolis between the Pacers and the Knicks. A full preview later into our third hour. Game 6 tomorrow in Dallas between the Mavericks and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And, of course, Game 7 on Sunday at altitude between the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. We start with Game 6 tomorrow evening, DRS. On a Saturday in Dallas, the Mavericks host the Thunder. Dallas 1 win away from going to the Western Conference Finals. The Thunder trying to win Game 6, stave off elimination, and force a Game 7. At this moment, the Mavericks booked as a 4-point home favorite, the over-under at 209 and a hook. We have seen 3 games decided with the road team winning in this series, each time outright as an underdog. The last time we were in Dallas for Game 4, it's what OKC pulled off.
Yeah, we saw some Game 6s, or should I say Game 6 that's going to be up tonight, where a team is looking to stave off elimination to force a Game number 7. We saw it last night, the Minnesota Timberwolves looking to get to a Game 7, staving off elimination at home. This is the opposite here for the Dallas Mavericks. They're not trying to get to a Game 7. They're in their own building trying to end this series here, and they're a favorite at -4. I loved what I saw to Luka Doncic after an underwhelming triple-double in the game previous. Was sensational on the road and a great victory there for the Mavericks. The reason you have home court advantage here is you want to take care of business. Now, home court advantage for the series is OKC's. The only home court advantage that matters tonight is if the Mavericks win, there won't be any more home court advantage for OKC because that series will be done and they'll be moving forward to the Western Conference Finals. That total of 209.5, usually, Ben, I tell you right off the bat and say, you know what? I love unders later in series, but this one still feels like we got some more fireworks to go. And if we're looking at some of those superstars to perform in the biggest moments, we are anticipating another triple-double out of Luka Doncic tonight. He's probably going to get that. Let me see what SGA's got cooking on the road. Something tells me we're headed back to OKC for Game 7.
104-92. The Mavs victorious in game number 5 behind that phenomenal performance out of Luka Doncic, a 31-point triple-double in which he made 5 threes. Luka's three-point shooting really has been a key metric for Dallas's overall team success here in the playoffs. 209 in a hook, the smallest over-under we have seen so far in this series. 4 of the first 5 games have stayed under. Game 1's total was around 218 and a hook. We have dropped now by nearly 10 points to 209 and a half. A couple of key props to pay attention to. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that points prop 31 and a half. He scored 30 in Game 5. Chet Holmgren, second leading scorer for Oklahoma City, only 13. SGA needs some help. And Luka Doncic, 28 and a half, the points prop for game number 6 tomorrow night in Dallas.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to need those big performances out of those players. And you're right. It's like clockwork, right? And again, no more than 35, no less than 27. He's going to be right in that range. He'll probably right around that 30-point number. But if you are a superstar player, there's 2 of them tonight you're watching out. SGA, we expect to have a big game. Luka Doncic, we expect to have a big game. But you know who's laying there waiting in the weeds here, where any given moment can score 27, 28, 29 points? It's Kyrie Irving. If he steps up and plays Batman to Robin tonight, where Luka Doncic is really on it as well, I don't see any way for OKC. But if we're getting the Kyrie Irving that we've been seeing this entire series, averaging roughly 10 points per game, I think there's a chance OKC can hang on in this one. Plus 4 points tonight, it's probably where I'm leaning. But my goodness, man, that home court advantage is going to be major tonight. Luka Doncic props, boop, to the moon.
Just a reminder, this game on Saturday night, tomorrow night in Dallas. Game 6 tonight is in Indy between the Pacers and the Knicks. Quickly here, DRS, a statement from Scottie Scheffler to ESPN's Jeff Darlington. Quote, this morning, I was proceeding as directed by police officers. It was a very chaotic situation, understandably so, considering the tragic accident that had occurred earlier. And there was a big misunderstanding of what I thought I was being asked to do. I never intended to disregard any of the instructions. I'm hopeful to put this to the side and focus on golf today. More on the early line up next.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Hendrick ends up winning his first PGA Tour win. He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in 2, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Do Leafs fans stop watching hockey now, or do they root for other Canadian teams, Cam?
No, I'm not a proponent of that, and it's actually kind of bothered me that, like, all the people in Toronto are kind of like, oh, now I'm going to cheer for the Oilers. Like, why? What was your affiliation with the Oilers? Like, Canucks still exist. Like, I don't lose automatically and say, yeah, you know, I'm going to cheer for the Ottawa Senators because they're Canadian. No, I cheer for my bats.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
A lot of books, and outside of the New York area, the Canes are actually favored in Game 1 of this series. I'm seeing it right now. I'm looking. I see a minus 115 Canes, Rangers minus 105.
I like the 6 and 7 games prop, like I took with Boston, Toronto, which we now know is going to cash. I think it's got a chance to go the distance. It's going to be a long, tough, close series.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL? Ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A ton of moving parts, as you might expect, on this Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. So normally to start our third hour, we hear from the people. To end this second hour, we will hear from the people, because to start hour 3, we will be just about 5 minutes away from when Scottie Scheffler is expected to tee off for his second round of the 2024 PGA Championship, and all focus and eyes will be on Valhalla, what it means from the betting odds, what we expect out of Scottie Scheffler, and any further information provided on this Friday to start hour 3 again. That's at 10:02 a.m. Eastern time. So to end out this second hour DRS, let's hear from the people. The Timberwolves win by 45 in game number 6 last night at home over the Denver Nuggets. 115-70. Again, a 45-point win, the largest margin of victory in an NBA playoff game since 2015. So it forces a Game 7. What does it mean for Game 7? And who will win and advance in the winner-take-all scenario to the Western Conference Finals? That was our question in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, who will win game number 7 on Sunday in Denver? Will it be the Nuggets or the Timberwolves? The Nugs are booked as a 4.5-point favorite, so the odds makers expecting Denver to hold serve on its home floor, and the public agrees. About 69% of the public saying the Nuggets will win game 7 and advance to the Western Conference Finals for a second straight season.
And you can't fault them, right? Because game number 7 in elevation is what you're supposed to do, handle your business. But it wasn't as if we just watched the game last night. Like, wow, Anthony Edwards, 51 points, hit a 3-point shot at the gun to force game 7. What an amazing performance. That was the Nuggets not even showing up last night, going like, okay, we're confident enough that we're going to go home in game 7 and handle our business, when that momentum completely now swings back over to the Timberwolves. Now, for myself, do I think the Nuggets actually win game 7? Well, they're favored to win game number 7, so they probably should. But I did vote for the Timberwolves here because I have had a rooting interest in them all the way through. Love the game 7, and I love the fact that those two stars are going to go toe-to-toe with that advancement here. And also, if you are the Timberwolves, what a better way to go out then in this series than win game 7 on the reigning champions' home court to sort of propel themselves and say, it doesn't matter who we play the rest of the way. We just vanquished those demons who won it last year. So I voted Timberwolves, even though 31%. So officially, Ben, I'm fading the public here.
And the Denver Nuggets were atrocious, abysmal, whatever word you want to describe to echo bad offensively last night. 30% from the floor as a team, only 70 points in total, just 9 after they had given up all hope in that fourth and final quarter. 19% from 3. That's 7 of 36. There's been a couple of uncharacteristic offensive performances out of Denver. Game 2 at home, 80 points. The Timberwolves, one of the best defensive teams in the NBA, hold Denver to only 70 last night in Game 6. And obviously, the Nuggets are favored in Game 7. We expect them to win at least outright and advance to the Western Conference Finals. But I do think the 45-point margin could offer a slight change in thought with how dominant Minnesota has been at certain times in this series. Listen, we have seen the Timberwolves win by 26. We have seen the Nuggets win by 27. We have seen now a 45-point victory margin. Every game, all 6 in this series, DRS, the winning team has covered a number. That's because that in games 1 through 4, the road team won on the road as an underdog. Denver won and covered in a big way in game 5. Minnesota, of course, winning by 45, covering as a 2.5-point home favorite last night. My point being, if you expect the Nuggets to win, I would not be spooked off by laying 4.5, even in what we expect to be a competitive winner-take-all game 7.
Nope, because you're not entering into this game going like, oh, man, Ben, I can't believe it. Like, games 1 and 2, we were absolutely beat down here. Game 5, we didn't even show up. Now we're expected to win. Hey, game number 7, they have a pedigree because they know they've won in elevation before. And also, again, taking all of that momentum. Now, sometimes momentum doesn't transfer over. We saw the Indiana Pacers smoke the Knicks, then get return smoked in Madison Square Garden. So you expect a great performance out of the Nuggets here. But there's something about this Timberwolves team who, again, if that game 1, game 2 team can show up, which included game number 2's victory without Rudy Gobert and still won that basketball game, they should have a lot of confidence going into Denver.
In both of the blowouts, Ant has scored 27. His points prop last night was 29 and a hook, and it only stayed under because his team won by 45. His points prop for Game 7, 27.5. You have to like that number. Hour 3 starts with a Scottie Scheffler update as he gets ready for his second round next.